Welcome to Quicksand, the most important news in pharma and biotech this week. The FDA published draft guidance calling for the judicious inclusion of pregnant women in clinical trials, with careful attention to potential fetal risk. The 14-page draft guideline notes that trial sponsors should consider including an ethicist in planning and to meet with the appropriate FDA review division, including experts in bioethics and maternal health, early on to discuss when and how to include pregnant women in a development plan. There may be circumstances in which a clinical trial can potentially expose a fetus to greater than minimal risk, the draft says. Pregnant women can be enrolled in clinical trials that involve greater than minimal risk to the fetuses if the trials offer the potential for direct clinical benefit to the enrolled pregnant women and/or their fetuses. The guidance also discusses when risks are not research-related and when they are independent of the study and not associated with a trial intervention or protocol requirements. In terms of the timing of enrollment, the draft says that in general, Phase 1 and Phase 2 clinical trials in a non-pregnant population that include females of reproductive potential should take place prior to enrolling pregnant women in later trial phases. Situations where it would be appropriate to stop a randomized controlled clinical trial that is enrolling pregnant women, according to the draft, include an appropriately planned interim analysis demonstrates superior efficacy of the control or active comparator arm, or there are documented serious maternal or fetal adverse events that can be reasonably attributed to drug exposure and are deemed to exceed the potential benefits of drug treatment. The FDA finalized a revised draft guidance from 2015 on the unique aspects and the types of information sponsors should submit for new drug applications and abbreviated new drug applications for liposome drug products. The 18-page guidance discusses chemistry, manufacturing, and controls, human pharmacokinetics and bioavailability, and in the case of an ANDA, bioequivalence and labeling. Sections of the guidance also touch on descriptions and composition, physiochemical properties, critical quality attributes, description of manufacturing process and process controls, control of lipid components, drug product specification, stability, and post-approval changes in manufacturing. FDA noted that most of the changes to the 2015 revised draft guidance were made to clarify statements from a 2002 draft, and this latest finalized version reflects FDA's consideration of comments. The guidance does not provide recommendations on clinical efficacy and safety studies, non-clinical pharmacology and/or toxicology studies, liposome formulations of vaccine adjuvants, or biologics or drug lipid complexes. United States Pharmacopoeia announced that it will not develop new product-specific monographs for biologics unless there is stakeholder consensus supporting the creation of a specific monograph, including the support of the FDA. The comment follows a recent letter sent from FDA to USP saying USP's efforts to develop biological product monographs could impede or delay licensure of biosimilars and other biologics. The letter follows questions raised by Amgen on whether the addition of suffixes to non-proprietary names of biologics and biosimilars could cause the products to be deemed by FDA to be misbranded or adulterated because they do not adhere to the appropriate USP monographs. The proposed change, according to USP, is intended to align compendial names with FDA's biologics naming approach and avoid potential issues for manufacturers and other stakeholders. Although the comment period ended March 30th, USP also said that if the changes advance to official status, a summary of the comments will be released to the public and posted on the USP website. The European Commission has advised marketing authorization holders to abandon their wait-and-see approaches to Brexit and act as if the United Kingdom will split decisively from the European Union in 12 months' time. Officials fear complacency will lead to supply disruptions if attempts to either soften or defer Brexit collapse. The European Medicines Agency has consistently advised drug makers to prepare for the UK to be treated as a third country from the end of March 2019 onward. That creates a relatively near-term deadline for drug makers to relocate their activities and regulatory records from the UK to other member states. However, amid uncertainty about the timing and nature of Brexit, some drug makers have opted to delay committing time and money to preparations. Many MAHs have not yet taken the necessary regulatory actions, such as marketing authorizations transfers, relocation of QPPV, etc., while recognizing the complexity of some of these procedures for companies to put in motion. There seems to be also a wait-and-see approach by the MAHs, the Commission wrote in its summary of a recent technical expert seminar. The seminar took place before Brexit negotiators reached agreements on some key sections of the withdrawal document. Those breakthroughs increased the likelihood that the EU and UK will agree to a transition period that pushes the effective date of departure out to the end of 2020. The progress could encourage more companies to defer contingency planning in a belief that little will change for at least 20 months. However, the UK could still crash out of the EU with no deal in March 2019. Officials plan to step up communication with drug makers to encourage them to act now. In other areas, the Commission is content with the state of Brexit preparations. The seminar summary highlighted the investments national regulators are making to equip themselves to handle work now performed by MHRA, calling the commitments valuable and essential. Two guidelines on developing and manufacturing drug substances and on the pharmaceutical limit set for 3 residual solvents, both of which were created via the International Council for Harmonization, were recently implemented in Canada. ICH's Q3C-R6, impurities, guideline for residual solvents, and Q11 Q&A, selection and justification of starting materials for the manufacture of drug substances, were adopted in 2016 and 2017 respectively. In contrast to the FDA, Health Canada refers drug makers to the ICH website to access the guidelines, whereas FDA releases its own versions. Health Canada, in announcing the implementation of ICH guidelines, clarifies that the scope and subject matter of its current guidances may not be entirely consistent with those of the ICH guidances that are being introduced. In the event of regulatory inconsistencies, implemented ICH guidances take precedence over Health Canada's. In February, FDA and Health Canada jointly announced plans to meet ahead of the ICH meeting in June for the Canada-US Regulatory Cooperation Council to discuss the areas that would benefit from regulatory harmonization. Health Canada said it plans to use the discussions to understand how the differences between its drug product regulation and that of the FDA can be minimized. Thank you for listening to Quicksand, episode 25, April 19th, 2018.